AI is coming for your job, but the story is much bigger. There is a question quietly spreading across almost every industry. A question that used to sound like science fiction, but now it feels personal. Is AI coming for my job? For some people, the answer is already yes. Customer support agents are watching AI handle conversations. Designers are watching models generate images in seconds. Programmers are watching AI write code. Analysts are watching machines summarize reports that once took hours to produce. Writers are watching software produce articles, scripts, advertisements, and stories. And companies are beginning to ask a question that would have sounded almost impossible a few years ago. How much work can we do with fewer people? That question is important, but it is also incomplete, because AI isn't simply coming for jobs. AI is coming for the way work itself is organized, and that story is much bigger. For most of modern history, a company has been built around people. You hire someone because they know something. You hire another person because they can do something. You create departments, you create managers, you create processes, you create software to help everyone coordinate, and eventually you have a company. A developer writes the code, a designer creates the interface, a marketer creates the campaign, a salesperson finds customers, an accountant manages the numbers, a manager coordinates the people. This is how we turned human intelligence into an organization. But what happens when intelligence becomes software? That is the question we are only beginning to explore. Because software has always been incredibly good at something humans are not, it can scale. One piece of software can serve 1,000 people, then 1 million, then 1 billion. But software traditionally needed humans to tell it what to do. AI changes that relationship. For the first time, software can increasingly understand language, reason about problems, generate content, write code, analyze information, and make decisions. And now, we are giving that software the ability to act. That is where things get interesting. Because there is a difference between an AI that helps you work and an AI that can actually do the work. Imagine a marketing department. Today you might have a strategist, a copywriter, a designer, a data analyst, a social media manager, a performance marketer, and a manager coordinating all of them. Now imagine an AI system that can research a market, analyze competitors, generate campaign ideas, write advertisements, create images, launch experiments, analyze the results, and continuously improve the campaign. Suddenly, AI isn't replacing one job. It is touching an entire workflow, and that distinction matters. Because the future may not look like millions of individual jobs disappearing one at a time, it may look like entire processes becoming automated. And once processes become automated, companies can change. Think about what happened when computers entered the workplace. Computers didn't simply replace people who used calculators. They changed accounting, they changed banking, they changed manufacturing, they changed communication. They created entirely new industries. The internet did something similar. It didn't simply replace newspapers. It changed advertising, retail, media, communication, entertainment. Entire business models disappeared. Entire new industries appeared. AI could be another transformation at that scale. Except this time, the thing being transformed is not physical labor, it is cognitive labor. And cognitive labor sits almost everywhere: law, finance, medicine, engineering, education, programming, marketing, research, management, creative work. That means the impact could spread far beyond the jobs we currently associate with AI. But here is where the story gets uncomfortable. If AI makes one person capable of doing the work that previously required 5 people, what happens to the other 4? Maybe they find different work. Maybe new industries appear. Maybe productivity increases enough to create entirely new demand. That has happened before. But there is another possibility. The economic value of certain skills could fall, not because those skills suddenly become useless, but because intelligence performing those tasks becomes abundant. And that is a very different problem. For most of human history, intelligence has been scarce. If you needed a lawyer, you needed a lawyer. If you needed a programmer, you needed a programmer. If you needed a translator, you needed a translator. If you needed a designer, you needed a designer. You were paying for access to scarce human expertise. But what happens when some forms of expertise become available on demand? What happens when intelligence becomes something you can simply call through an API? That is the deeper revolution. AI may be making intelligence programmable, and once intelligence becomes programmable, the structure of companies can change. Imagine starting a company today. You have an idea. Traditionally, you need people, a developer, a designer, a marketer, a researcher, a salesperson, an operations team. You need capital to hire them. You need management to coordinate them. You need time to build the organization. But imagine a different world. You have an idea. You tell your AI system, build the product. It creates the architecture. Another agent researches the market. Another analyzes competitors. Another creates the branding. Another writes the software. Another tests it. Another launches the marketing campaign. Another watches the analytics. And you make the decisions. Suddenly, the barrier to building a company changes. The question is no longer, how many people can I afford to hire? It becomes, how much can one person accomplish? That could create an explosion of tiny companies. One-person companies, five-person companies. Companies where most of the workforce isn't human. Companies that can operate 24 hours a day. Companies that can scale their intelligence without scaling their headcount. And that could change entrepreneurship forever. But there is another side. If companies can accomplish more with fewer people, the companies that adopt AI effectively may become dramatically more productive. And that creates a new competitive race. Company A has 10,000 employees. Company B has 2,000 employees. But every employee is amplified by AI. Who wins? The answer may have less to do with how many people a company has, and more to do with how effectively it can coordinate humans and machines. That means the competitive advantage of the future may not simply be talent, it may be AI architecture. How many agents can you deploy? What data can they access? What decisions can they make? How much autonomy can they have? How do you verify their work? How do you coordinate them? How do you keep humans in control? These questions could become as important to companies as hiring and management are today. And then we reach something even bigger. What happens when AI doesn't just automate individual tasks, but starts coordinating entire organizations? Imagine an AI system watching sales, inventory, finance, customer behavior, operations, engineering, marketing. It sees connections humans may not notice. It identifies problems. It proposes solutions. It assigns tasks to other agents. It measures the results. It continuously adjusts the organization. The company begins to behave less like a collection of departments and more like an intelligent system. That is when AI stops being a tool inside the company. AI becomes part of the company itself. And this is why the conversation about AI taking jobs can sometimes be misleading. Because the real transformation isn't human versus AI. It is increasingly human plus AI versus human without AI. A person using AI effectively may be able to accomplish dramatically more than someone working without it. That means the first wave of disruption may not be complete replacement, it may be amplification. One developer becomes capable of building more. One designer creates more. One researcher analyzes more. One entrepreneur operates a larger business. One scientist can explore more possibilities. One person becomes a much larger economic unit. And that sounds positive. But it creates another question. What happens when the productivity advantage becomes so large that companies no longer need the same number of people? That is where the future becomes uncertain. There is a temptation to predict exactly how many jobs AI will eliminate. 1 million, 100 million, half of all jobs. But those numbers miss something important. Jobs are not permanent objects. A job is a collection of tasks, and tasks can change. Some disappear, some become automated, some become more valuable, and entirely new tasks can appear. The job of a software developer today is already different from the job of a developer 20 years ago. The job of a designer is different. The job of a marketer is different. The job of a researcher is different. AI will accelerate that process. So the question may not be, will AI take my job? The better question is, which parts of my job are becoming software? And perhaps even more importantly, what becomes possible when those parts become software? Because this is where the story becomes much bigger than employment. AI doesn't only change workers, it changes what businesses can build, what individuals can accomplish, what startups can become, what software can do,